In this video I'm going to show you how I made this bezel set wave ring. And if you go to the website you'll see the full video, and I'll also show you how I made this bezel set cluster ring. Check it out. In this project with a 3mm square silver wire, and this is 80mm long. So what I'm going to do is chop it in half and roll one half to make the settings. So I'll roll it flat and the other half I'll keep to one side to make the shank. So as I said, I got just slightly under 1mm, between 0.9 and 1mm, and just visually it looks thick enough anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. The main concern is the width of it, which dictates the height of the setting. So as long as you've got 4mm or over, then you're good to go. And lengthwise, as I said, I've got plenty here to do 5 settings. I've got now it's just under 85mm, so around about 83mm. I'm not going to need all that, I'll have a little bit left over. So now with my round nose pliers, just grab the end as close to the end as possible and then just turn the metal around the pliers. You can just go slightly over halfway to make a half setting, and then just test fit the stone. So we don't need to do measurements or anything like that, it's just using your judgment, and you'll see how flexible you can be with making settings this way. Slightly angling the cut so that it meets the other side at the right angle. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I'll just give you a closer look. Because it's slightly angled like so it's not square there anymore, so I will square that off before I make the next setting. And now by using 2 pair of pliers you'll see how close I can get that joint together. I use my round nose and chain nose pliers, close up the joint first, and then I will squeeze it down. This will tighten it and get it level. You can see how tight that joint is now. So now just repeat the process. Square it off and turn it around your pliers. Again, just keep checking to make sure you're not going way too big or way too small. Ideally, when the settings are made and ready for setting, you'll find that the way we want it is to have the stones covering around about half the thickness of the setting. So you can see that it's more than half the thickness, but like I say, that's good enough for me. Just cut that off. Close it up and squeeze it down. Don't worry about tool marks, we'll deal with those later on. Just make sure you do get them level like that before I solder. It's not a lot, but hopefully it'll give you an indication of how much you will need to make the 4mm settings. Okay, I'll just pick the solder up as I melt it and pop it on the joint. Let the heat do the rest. And as you can see, the stone fits on top of the setting, doesn't go inside. They're actually not too bad in size. You can see that one is a lot smaller than this one here. So what I'll do is I'll just put it into the number 6 here. Number 6 of my 17-degree collet block. I'm not going to make them 17 degrees because that will span the settings out too far. So we just want a very gradual taper, and ideally something like this 10-degree punch. I can't assume you've got one of these, but I did find that my
my centre punch has got a very similar angle, so you can use something like that. So first of all, just knock it in, don't take it all the way in. All we're doing is squeezing the bottom of the setting down to start the tapering, and then we can just use the 17-degree punch just to make the top of the setting the right shape, and then we'll check again. So this is the one that was a little bit smaller, so I needed to open the top out anyway, and as I said earlier, you need to see half of the metal going around the stone, so that's not too far off, but the angle's a little bit flat. So what I'll do is I'll put it onto my centre punch, and I'll use my chasing hammer just to start shaping it. Give it a tap one way, turn it over and tap it the other way, this time a little bit firmer so I can start the tapering. And then again I use my centre punch. And if I need to knock it off, I will sharpen this later on if I need to, but just tap it until it comes off. Check the taper and the size. If you need to get more of a taper on it, then you can just give it a bit more of a tap into the regular 17-degree collet block and just tap around to take out the bulging that will happen around the middle of the setting. Now, because these are thicker than they need to be, I can just file them into the final shape later on, but that's what I'm looking for, a very gradual taper. So I've still got to work on them a little bit, so I'll just squeeze the bottom down again. I'll do the same on the other one, just to get that little bit more of a taper. Get rid of the file marks with emery paper. Okay, I filed them up and emery cleaned them. I actually filed more at the bottom of the setting to get a little bit more of an angle, so they come together like that and you get a nice soft curve like so. Now, if I did use the 17-degree collet block punch, you could see that it would be quite a tight curve to the settings. It would probably still work, but it doesn't look as nice on top of the setting as that softer curve, and we're going to file the finger shape into it later on anyway, but as long as you know that when you've made the settings you can file at the bottom to get a little bit more of an angle. So that's how I like my settings to come together. You get that nice very soft curve shape there. So you can see they're thinner at the bottom as well because I did file a little bit more off. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find where the solder joint is. It's quite easy because I've not cleaned up in the middle, but I can see the solder joint there. And what I'll do is I'm going to file a flat spot there. So I want to make sure that I get all the solder joints together. So this will guarantee that we will fix them at the right point. So I'll do that with each setting. Just make sure I do get the right spot. Okay, I've got my hard solder ready there. Just pop that on. Stand by with my solder pick. Just needs a little bit more solder on the other side. a wave to the stones. So just fire a flat spot there around the same thickness as the settings, and again I'll just lock it together with my locking tweezers, make sure it's all lined up. So just get it to run really. As soon as you do get it to run, I'll just get a more oxidizing flame. As soon as it runs and gone right through the joint, and I'll pull the flame. So now I'll repeat the process, and I'll put the next setting at around about that point there, so we have it waving off or turning off that way. So I'm going to file a flat spot. I've got a nice tight curve at the end that I think looks pretty good. In fact, maybe I should have done the same on this side, but I'm going to continue anyway. And also I like the curve at the bottom. I think that's going to fit into the size M quite nicely. Directing the flame, just keep it on the two settings that are being soldered, otherwise the other part will drop off. And as soon as it takes off, there we go, I'll leave it at that. Doing it this way is quite a lot of fun, but do get some practice in. Maybe use some copper or brass first just to test out the technique. Make sure you strike it really square, because we want to keep the actual profile square, otherwise it's quite hard to maintain that square profile. So all the impacts are going to be around the middle part of the square winder. Spin annealed, of course. I'll turn it around 90 degrees to work on the other side, and then again keep turning and make sure you strike it dead square. You want to keep that profile perfectly square. Keep going. I'll turn it around this way so that I hammer out an even section. I'll keep it the same thickness at both ends, so I've got around about 5 or 6 mil that I've not touched on the ends there. That will be that'll form the shoulders, and it'll be slightly thicker as it meets the head of the ring. Just take it up to cherry red, and then just allow. Okay, I've stretched it a couple more mil, not quite at 60 mil total, but what I'm going to do now is just concentrate on flattening out one side so that it becomes thinner and a little bit wider where I'm hammering. I'm going to use a swage block. So the swage block has got these half round sections in there, so I can hammer it into this to form that shape. It's a little bit old and battered, this. I've had it since I was a student many years ago, but it still works well. So I'll just hammer it flat as I can go, first of all, into one where there's plenty of room there. You probably want to wear ear protection because it is quite loud, this process, but already we've got a nice half round shape there. Do the other side, and also I'll work it along in the middle there as well to start forming a half round profile in the middle. So that's pretty much got the shape that I want there. It's still thick this way, so it will meet up with the setting. It'll step quite nicely down from the setting to the shoulders at that point. So I'll anneal that now. Before I do anneal it, I'm just going to do a little bit of hammer work just in the middle section and just work on the side, so I can on these edges here. So the way to use this is to start on the larger ones and work it down. The other method is to use a soft surface like a towel and use the handle of a punch, something like that, and then you can start forming the ring that way. So I'm avoiding any unnecessary damage on the surface there, so this is quite a good method and it'll start the process. Of course you can just use pliers and do it manually that way, but sections of the swage block, and now I can introduce using punches to shape it from the inside. A nice tight curve. This part of the shank is thin enough that we can do the rest of the work with the pliers. So I'm aiming to make it a good few sizes smaller at this stage so that I can just hammer it onto my mandrel and get it to the correct finger size. And I just need to cut a small amount off the ends and then shape the ends to fit onto the head of the ring. And before I do that, I'm going to hammer it flat to make sure that it's nice and straight and flat on both sides here. It's better to do cold working or hammering at this stage rather than filing. I don't want to take too much. And see how it's fitting together. To do a little bit more filing here. Not too far off now. What I also need to do is just make sure the ends of the settings are nice and flat and clean, so I'll just go over with my needle file, and all I'm using to help me with the soldering is this one here. They're called ring soldering tweezers, but it might be called something different with your tool shop, but as long as you know what it looks like, they're not very expensive and very much worth having in your tool collection. It's very put the solder in place. And we'll file up the shank and emery clean it, give it a polish, and then we're ready for setting. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a dividing line between the bezels, so that when it's all set they do look like separate settings. You don't want it all mushed in at the connecting points. So I'm using a very fine saw blade. I've got a 6/0 saw blade. If you've got finer, then that is going to be better, but cut from one side and then from the other. You can just go around the outer edge of each of the settings and just take the edge off, file a flat spot at around a 45 degree angle, so something like that. And that'll be the point at which the hammering will take place. So be careful not to put file marks on the shoulder as you go around. In the other video I showed how to set the stones using my easy set pliers, and you can see how attractive it looks.
But for this one I'm just going to do a classic bezel setting. So to do that I'm going to use my Dremel tool, and this has got a special tip at the end, so have a look at the accompanying video telling you all about these Dremel tool tips. If you go to the JTS shop, you might find that they're sold out. They just go like hotcakes. I am getting some more in stock, so keep checking to make sure that you get yours, because they are absolutely brilliant for doing this kind of setting, as you will soon see. A setting burr, and if you're going to use a setting burr, it looks like that, and you've got to make sure that it's exactly the same size as the stone. So you can see I've got 4mm setting burr and the stone's 4mm, so all you have to do is run the burr into the setting. You can just see that line on the inside, that's still too high, so go a little bit further down into the setting. And my rule of thumb for the depth of the cut is to make the depth the distance between the table of the stone and the girdle of the stone, which for a smaller stone like this is quite hard to judge, but when you're setting larger stones you can set your dividers to that measurement and just test the depth or mark the point to cut to. So that's why for something like this I use the straight part of the burr as a guide. So this part here sticking out, we want 2/3 of it sticking out, and I don't think we're too far off it now. Just see if we got it at the right depth. So we want to look at it side on, and we should only just see the table of the stone, which in this case you can see we're at the right depth there. So now I'm going to hammer that with my tool, and you'll see how efficient it is. I'll just put it into my Benchmade first. Now when you buy these Dremel electric engravers, they come with a sharpened tip, which is no good for doing this, so that's why you need to have the special tips for setting. And with this particular tip, this is the narrowest one of the pack of 3 that I sell. This is 1.5 in diameter, and all I do with this is just grind the sides to make almost like a screwdriver shape, and I just angle it like that. So I use this part of the tool here, the tip there. You can see it's a little bit warm, but it will still work on this. You can actually just use the tips as they come. You don't have to do this kind of shaping, but for something like this you can get right into this area here. So I'll just turn this on. It is a bit noisy, so just bear that in mind. And I'm just going to show you how I'd finish these off, and then I'll finish the other 3 settings, and I'll probably use this method that I've just shown you now to do the other 3. So I just rub around the inside lip of the setting with a pointed burnisher, so you can make a tool like that yourself quite easily just with steel and get it nicely polished, and then that'll bright cut the lip of the setting, and that's pretty much it. So
I also use my burnisher just to smooth out the outer edge of each of the settings as well. So just angle it at the same angle that you filed at, and just with a lot of pressure just work it around the outer edge rather than use your file to get rid of the tool marks. And this will also give it a really nice polish, as you'll soon see. So once I've done that, I'll go around the inside, burnishing the inside of the settings as I did earlier, like so. And then for final touch-up, we'll use some cleanup discs called Shofu Brownies and Shofu Greenies.
Check out the full course on the website, where you'll also get to learn how to make this cluster ring. Hope you enjoyed.